Hi, welcome back. At this point, we have done multiplying decimals and we've done multiplying standard. Now I want to divide decimals. I know we have not done this that much this year, especially not dividing a decimal by a decimal. We usually divide decimals by whole numbers, but it's simple. It just takes a little bit more thinking. Okay. As with multiplying decimals, at first we are going to be ignoring the actual decimals, okay? So you may hear me say 32. That is not because this is equal to 32. That is because I am ignoring the decimal at first, okay? So I just want to make that clear, just a disclaimer that you may hear me say 32 whenever talking about the divisor, but I really mean it's just the number that we're going to use to do our dividing, okay? Because we're ignoring decimals at first. And then, of course, we can't ignore them for too long because whenever we find our quotient, we have to put our decimal back in our quotient, okay? So let's get started. I set this up and I set it up this way using a marker because I wanted it to be big. And I encourage my students to use color and also use, write kind of big so they can have some room to work out their problems. Okay, 50 and 24 hundredths divided by 3 and 2/10. Okay. My dividend is 50 and 24 hundredths, and this is my divisor, 3 and 2/10. Like I said, I'm going to be saying 32 because that's what I'll have to use to divide until we put the decimals back into play. When dividing, you want to have some extra space on the side, okay? And that is so you can do multiplication, especially when you're dividing by double digits, okay? Your first step is divide. Your second step is multiply. Your third step, subtract, and your fourth step is to bring down. And you're going to repeat this process over and over until you are done. Now, there are no remainders in decimals, so that makes it easier. If we have to go as far as adding another 0, we can do that, but we're not going to worry about that right now until we actually get our answer. Daddy, mommy, sister, brother, that's one mnemonic device that we use. We also use, does McDonald's sell burgers? Okay, so just keep that in mind. Make sure you are doing each step. So let's get started. First, divide. Can 32 go into 5? No, it cannot. You can't do 5 divided by 32. 32 would be too big. So we're going to move on to the next digit. Can 32 go into 50? Yes, it can. How many times? Just once. And what do I mean by how many times can 32 go into 50? Well, that's when we start multiplying. I'm going to take 32 times 2. I know 32 times 1 is just 32. I want to get as close to 50 without going over 50. You don't want to go over, okay? 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. 32 times 2 is 64. 64 is larger than 50. So 32 cannot go into 50 2 times because that's too big. So we have to bring it down to just 1. 32 times 1 is just simply 32. That is as close as we can get to 50 without going over. 1 time. Placement is everything. I am not going to put the 1 in front of, I'm not going to put the 1 on top of the 5 because as we stated, 32 cannot go into 5, okay? It can go into 50. So my first digit of my quotient will be placed over that 0 and 50. Now, moving on to the next step, which is multiply. We have actually already done our multiplication over on the side. And what we like to say in class sometimes, this is our water. This number floats, and this number sinks. What do I mean by that? That means that the one floats to the top where the quotient is, and the 32, that's your product, that's gonna sink down here. Now we've done our multiplication step. Next step is subtract. 50 minus 32. 0 minus 2, we cannot perform that operation. 0 is smaller than 2. So we're going to borrow from the 5. We're going to turn that 5 into a 4. And I'm going to put the 4 up in the corner over there. So if I borrow a 10, that's going to turn this 0 into 10. Okay, 10 minus 2 is 8. 4 minus 3 is 1. Okay, 18 is less than 32. So I'm going to go ahead and move on with the next step, which is bring down. I'm going to bring down the next digit, which is 2. Now we have a new dividend right there, 182. So now we are going to go ahead and start over and repeat the process. After you bring down, go ahead and repeat. So let's divide again. This is our new dividend, and this is our same divisor we're using, okay? 182 divided by 32. When dividing, how many times can 32 go into 182? Let's multiply on the side and see if we can come up with an answer that's close to 182 without going over. So we're going to take 32, that's our divisor, and we're going to multiply it by a certain number. What should we multiply by? Well, I'm going to look at the 3 and the 18. That gives me a clue. I know that 3 times 6 is 18. And this is when your fact fluency and knowing your fact family come in handy, okay? Because if you know your 3's times tables, you know that 3 times 6 will give you 18. So that would be a good number to start off with to multiply. But really, if you just want to pick a number between, 2 and 9, that's your business, but it will take you longer to come up with your answer. Okay. I picked 6 to multiply. Let's see if we can come close to 182 without going over. 2 times 6 is 12, and I'm going to carry my 1. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 1 is 19. Okay, this 192 is bigger than 182. This is too large, so 6 is not going to work. That means we need a number smaller than 6. Let's just go one lower. So we're going to do 32 times 5. We are still on the multiplication step. We're still on the dividing step, but we're doing the multiplication to see what our quotient is going to be. 5 times 2 is 10. I'm going to carry the 1. 5 times 3 is 15. Plus 1 is 16. So when I multiply 32 times 5, I get 160. Once again, this is the water. This is going to float. This is going to sink. 160 comes close to 182 without going over. So 5 floats to the next place value at the top. And 160 sinks so that we can subtract. All right, so we did our divide and multiply. Now we're going to go ahead and subtract. 2 minus 0 is 2. 8 minus 6 is 2. After we subtract, we look at our answer. 22 is less than 32. Let's bring down. We have a 4. All right, now after we brought down a digit, if you brought down a digit, you know that you have to keep going, okay? You don't stop until you stop bringing down, okay? Now we have 224. That's our new dividend, okay? We're gonna start over and divide. How many times can 32 go into 224? Let's continue to multiply to figure out that answer. We want to multiply to get a number that comes close to 224 without going over. That's what we're going to put in our quotient. So I look at the 3 and I look at the 22. I know that 22 is close to 21. I know that 3 can go into 22 7 times. I know that 3 can go into 21 7 times evenly. So the number that I'm thinking about multiplying by is going to be 7. Okay, so now I have 32 times 7. 7 times 2 is 14, and I'm going to carry the 1. 7 times 3 is 21, plus 1 is 22. 224 matches perfectly with 224. So 32 can go into 224 7 times evenly. That means that this is going to float and this is going to sink. 7 floats to the top, 224 sinks. Now, when we say float and sink, please understand that this is still your dividend, okay? This is still your quotient. This is still your divisor, okay? That means that 224 divided by 32 equals 7. 182 divided by 32 equals 5. 50 divided by 32 equals 1. We're using hints and other things that help us go through the process, but we need to make sure that we understand the reasoning behind it. Okay, now that we have done the division and the multiplication over here, we're going to go ahead and subtract. We have nothing left here, and we have nothing left to bring down. But we are not done. Now, I've been saying 32, but I want to welcome back 3 2/10. When I divide 50 and 24 hundredths by 3 2/10, I want to make sure that I'm placing my decimal in the right spot. Now, normally, if we were just dividing by a whole number, class, we know to raise the decimal up to the top, but we are dividing by a decimal. So now what? Well, when you're dividing by a decimal, what you want to do is, if the decimal is in the house, just raise it to the roof. But if you have a decimal on the side, slide. Okay. So what we did, you want to slide your decimal point to the right, however many spaces you need to make a whole number. So what I did, I turned that 3 2/10 into a 32 by moving the decimal over one space. If I move the decimal over one space on the side in my divisor, I'm going to do the same thing in the dividend. I'm going to take this decimal and I'm going to slide it one space to the right. My new decimal is right here, and I'm just going to raise it to the top. Okay, and that means that our quotient, which is our answer, is going to be 15 7/10. And you can always multiply to check your answer. That always helps, because if you multiply and you get anything other than this, then you have the wrong answer. So if you have any questions about what I just did, or if you would like another example, I didn't see another example like this on your packet with the dividing decimals by decimals, but if you would like to see another example, just let me know and I'll be happy to show you. Okay, until the next video, thank you for watching. I'll see you later.